So humbling to be going last after those three amazing speakers and leaders and inspirations. Um, Let me thank first and foremost my dear friend whom I don't see, she was here a moment ago, but the amazing Carol Carter, who, as you know, has been just such a force behind Global Minded. Oh, hi, Carol. But also on a personal basis has been, an incredible source of inspiration for me personally. As maybe some of you know, Carol was a very successful book writer, and she helped me through this journey of book writing. So thank you, Carol, for your mentorship, for your friendship, and for all these discussions about how to write a book and where to start. Thank you also to the Global Minded team here. I have just a frustration. I've only attended 8 of 11 Global Minded events, so I'm a little frustrated because I missed the first 3 ones. But since then, I am here, and this is my favorite event of the year, as Carol knows. So thank you for the invitation. So let me introduce my book, Love to Learn. And share that this book actually is very personal. So when I was 3 years old, I was what you may call a late everything. I was a late walker. I was a late talker. So naturally, my parents had me take one of those psychological tests, or psychological evaluations. Test came back and said that I had low academic aptitude. Not exactly what parents want to see at age 3. But instead of my panicking, my parents responded with a lot of poise and something that was really powerful and simple. They covered me with a lot of love. And they enrolled me in a beautiful and high-quality early childhood program, the equivalent of Head Start in the country where I was born. And it was a setting where I was nurtured, supported for my special needs, and most importantly, seen. And that simple act, I believe, changed everything. And looking back, it was not just the education itself that I received that mattered, but it was the relationships. The care of my parents, of course, that I already mentioned, but also the warmth of my teachers, and especially 2 early childhood educators that I speak at length in the book, who really took care of me in these very early years, and the presence of my community, of course, around me. So these early bonds became the foundation for everything that came after, including my eventual journey to Harvard University, and my current work at Stanford. And maybe most importantly, this really big drive that I have of and dedication to reimagining education starting in the earliest years of life. That's why I wrote Love to Learn, because I believe in something very profound and simple in many ways. If we want to unlock human potential, we must start with relationships. And it feels actually quite timely because we are at a turning point, and I see it every day in my work at Stanford University. As LinkedIn Chief Economist Officer has said, the future of work is not just digital or technical, it is relational. We are entering a relational economy where our ability to connect, to collaborate, and to care for others is becoming the most valuable currency we all have. So I want to touch on 3 different things today. One is a little bit of science. Okay, I work in academia, so I can't escape that, a little bit of science. Second, the current crisis of connection that we are experiencing that is touching our children. And then leave all of you with some hope. And then a bright vision for all of us to work together to build a bold, relationship-centered vision for our future of learning. But let's begin with the science briefly. I like to say that we are all born billionaires. Not necessarily in dollar terms, but in terms of number of neurons in our brains. So we are all born as human beings, as infants, with about 100 billion neurons. But those neurons in our brains are not enough. They need to be connected. And those connections, they are built moment by moment through human relationships. In fact, 90% of our brains develop before age 5. And this is not metaphorically, it's quite biologically. And the brain is never more plastic, never ready to be shaped, never more ready to learn than in those early years. So not only we learn before we enter kindergarten, we learn the most before kindergarten. So what wires the brain? Well, those serve and return interactions, as my dear colleague Jack Shonkoff at Harvard University called them. This is safety, presence, love, an eyesight, a touch, a laughter. That's what builds our brains. And we know this from very heartbreaking studies that have been done on a very sobering setting of the Romanian orphanages, where it's estimated that anywhere between 100,000 or up to 500,000 young children were abandoned in Romanian orphanages between the 1970s and 1980s. And those young children were raised in extreme neglect. So they were fed and they were clothed, but they lacked nurturing relationships. The result from this research is that the brains of those young children were physically smaller by about 10%. They also had severe developmental delays and long-term emotional challenges. So that what was missing here again was not food, it was love. And we see this also in more hopeful studies. So I have a colleague and child psychiatrist at Washington University that found that the size of a child's hippocampus, which is the front side of our brains, the area of our brain that's responsible for memory and a lot of learning, varies also significantly by about 10% based on how nurturing a caregiver is with a child. So in other words, if we want smarter children, and we all want this as parents, as grandparents, as teachers, as educators, as aunties, as uncles and more, the answer is not more flashcards. It's not starting math earlier. It's more love. And yet, despite all of this, despite all this science of relationships, we continue to treat relationships as invisible in our systems of learning. And clearly, the pandemic has in many ways made this very apparent to all of us. So at the onset of COVID-19, I had the opportunity to speak with a pediatrician and neuroscientist in New York City named Dani Dumitriou, a dear colleague of mine. She was studying at the time whether COVID was transmittable from mom to newborn, and she found very quickly that it was not the case. But then she started to observe some other kind of concerning things about the connection between mom and baby. So she started to study this more in depth. And she then shared with me that 80% of the babies that were born in this very large hospital called Morgan Stanley Hospital in New York City lacked strong emotional connection in their earliest days. But what shocked me even more than this data, because I was like, okay, maybe this is one point during the pandemic at the onset in New York City. You may all remember this was really the epicenter of the disease for all of us in the US. She shared that even before the pandemic, 60% of young children did not have a strong emotional bond with a caregiver. So that's not a pandemic problem, that's our baseline. And today that crisis is deepening. So we often hear this adage that actually was born in Africa that says, it takes a village to raise a child. But these networks of connections around our young children are shrinking. Families are getting smaller, as we all know about fertility declining. Grandparents often live further and further away. It's definitely the case for my own family. We live also increasingly in age-segregated societies. So one data point in my research, which I thought was really interesting and concerning, only 3% of children in the US have ever met an adult above age 65 who is not a family member. Only 3%. We clearly live in age-segregated societies where our younger members of our societies are not seeing older adults. Play is also receding and has been increasingly replaced with more structured activities in many environments. And then increasingly screens, of course, and technology is interfering with human relationships. Let me give you two data on this. One is on children. 40% of children under age 2 now have their own device. 40% of children under age 2 have their own device. And then on the adult side, and you can check that data on your phone very easily, the average American picks up their device 205 times per day, in average. My average is a little higher. I encourage you to check yours. But what it means is that there are a lot of opportunities to interrupt and interfere with a beautiful human relationship as a result of technology. So in many ways, we have this increasing paradox where we are more physically present in our children's life, but we are more and more emotionally absent. And now we add artificial intelligence into the mix, and AI can teach, maybe it can tutor, maybe it can simulate empathy, but it can't love. It can't co-regulate a child's big emotions. It can't offer real attunement. So while AI gets more artificial, we must get more human. And I believe this is a defining challenge of our time. To grow not only IQ or EQ, but really our RQ, what I call our relational intelligence, our capacity to care and collaborate for others. So where do we go from here? And let me leave you with maybe a little bit more hopeful note here in this afternoon. I believe we must reimagine learning and care as fundamentally relational. So what if we reimagine family time as relational time? What if every school in this country was designed not just for academic readiness, but for relational flourishing? What if we trained educators not just in instruction, but in connection? What if we measure not just literacy scores or numeracy scores for those testing measures, but the strength of connection in a classroom? So here is my call to action for all of you. It's very simple, it's to let's make relationships visible again. Let's grow relational intelligence with the same urgency we give to artificial intelligence these days. Because in a world of rapid automation, our humanity will be our superpower. So to love to learn, which is the title of my book, I believe we must all first learn to love. Thank you.
Awesome. It was wonderful to hear from each of you, and we're going to have a reception outside, and it's just free soft drinks, and it's cash bar, and there's some snacks and some potato chips and things like that, but you're going to get to meet these amazing people. And Isabelle, what we've done is there's these little postcards, and she's going to sign the back for anybody who's interested, and you can order off Amazon on the cue card. So we won't have the physical books here, but she can write a little message, and we're going to have her set up out there. And you're going to get to meet everybody else. And then we've also asked a lot of the different people who were here today speaking, the students, for some peer-to-peer connections, so you all can get to better know each other socially. And that human connection is often formed at things like receptions like this. Not always just sitting in the room and absorbing information, but being able to walk up to somebody you don't know, introduce yourself, ask them where they're from, ask them how they heard about Global Minded, ask them what was the most interesting thing that struck them today. These are those relational skills that will allow each of you to be Teflon coated in the age of AI. Because those are the human skills that will take your abilities beyond the technology. So we're going to all be participating in that during this reception. And I'm looking forward to getting to know a lot of you too, because I know I've been like checking on different things, all day today. So I haven't met as many of you as I want to. But let's give these folks a round of applause, and let's go out and have a fun party reception. And congratulations on a wonderful first day. And we can't wait to see you all tomorrow morning as well. So thanks for everything.